afternoon. It's 14 minutes past 1. This is Joy 99.7 FM. And I'm so excited to be coming your way. It's a rainy Tuesday afternoon and the Rainmaker's on the radio. This is the Executive Lounge, the business thought leadership show that brings you nuggets of insights from the lives of men and women who've dreamed and scaled the daunting heights of taking those dreams to a whole new level, and in the process creating a blueprint that you and I can emulate and be inspired by. Today, I'm joined by a man I so admire, a man I think I first met when he was just he was the founding dean of the engineering faculty at Ashesi University. He's a Ghanaian inventor, an engineer. You didn't know this one. He's also a novelist, an educator, and of course, my favorite part, he's a thought leader. But a man of action, not just a thought leader. Very, very driven man. Very unassuming, but laden with a lot of experience and expertise in the area of innovation and engineering. Is now the provost and president at Academic City College. Dr. Fred McBagonluri is my guest, and he happens to be a Leo too, which is nice.
Top cookies.
Yes, and you're welcome to the Executive Lounge. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I must say that I whenever I'm led to reach out to someone and invite them to the show, sometimes schedule makes it difficult to happen, but I was so humbled by your keen interest in the subject matter that I presented and your willingness to come at the drop of a hat. I mean, you were instantly taken by the conversation that I wanted to have with you. So thank you for honoring the invitation and joining us today.
Thank you very much.
So shall we just do the getting to know you bit and get that out of the way, because I need to really plunder your mind today.
Sure.
You know, so you're a man. You were born here in Accra.
Yes.
But you're of, how do I say this?
From the Upper West parentage.
Yes, Upper West parentage.
A Ghana by birth, Upper Westerner by genes.
Yes. You know, but of course you then went on to study engineering,
yes,
and then you did an MBA at MIT as well.
That's right.
But the thing about you is, how did you fall in love with engineering?
Oh boy, that's I discovered engineering actually by accident. I used to have a neighbor growing up who was a mechanic at the electricity corporation, and he used to restore vehicles, and I used to spend time with him and his children. But I always thought I would go to medical school.
Wow.
I really, really thought I would go to medical school. And then I got the head of state award in 91, did all the paperwork, sent it up to scholarship secretariat, and one of the officers took the scholarship forms and looked at it for a while, and he said, didn't anybody tell you that this was an engineering scholarship? I was like, engineering? He said, yeah. Do you still want to go? And I had like 5 seconds to say yes. And so I came to engineering by an accident of fate.
Okay. So then you went on to Central State University?
Yes, I went to Central State University. I studied manufacturing engineering.
With a minor in applied math.
Applied mathematics.
What kind of brain is in that head of yours? I mean, the regular maths. Nah, we are running away from it. Then you went to do engineering, and then applied math. Your minor.
I actually was one core course away from a bachelor's degree in mathematics.
Wow.
I actually took more courses than was needed, but the core was abstract algebra, which I didn't get to take. Otherwise, I would have gotten a degree in mathematics.
Wow, abstract algebra. Oh, that's scary.
It's great stuff.
Algebra, itself, sometimes
it was really abstract.
Yeah, sometimes you look back and you're like, thank God that it's over. I don't have to do algebra again. But anyway, it is tough stuff. But I guess it also unearths the gem in the person who's studying it. Now, you wanted to go to medical school. You did engineering by accident, and then somehow you started doing a lot more work. And guess where you ended up? You started inventing stuff for the medical field.
Yeah. I think it was in my destiny to do that. I think I was supposed to do something medical related. And I didn't really study anything medical related, even at the university.
Right.
But the beauty about a medical specialty is that it's a convergence of expertise, and once you basically have the fundamentals right, your job is to apply. So a good engineer can apply in any field. I don't have to have a degree in agric engineering to be able to build bulldozers. I just need to know that the principles of physics are the same.
Okay, that's interesting. So you can actually pretty much fit in any space. But now let's jump into the subject matter of invention and innovation itself. Is it something that's taught? Are there universal principles or what you'd make or cardinal points that makes innovation standardized? That you can standardize it and teach it.
So look, I think every one of us is creative. Innovation requires a degree of discipline. And discipline in the sense that once you have the idea, you have to be able to bring some structure to it. So one of the interesting things that you will see in industry in general is that Americans tend to be quite creative. They have strong creative outlets, ideas flow. And the Germans are very innovative because they have a disciplined culture of being methodical. They are not in a hurry. They'll take a complex problem and they'll eat at it slowly. And if you're surprised, take a look at the BMW engine and you ask yourself, how has this evolved into the monster that it is today? It wasn't done overnight. So creativity, everybody can be creative, but it takes some discipline, and that discipline could be in the classroom, that discipline could be on the job training, to really begin to see the opportunities. Innovation is really about, it's not just about the ideas, it's about how you take that idea, turn it into a good or service that has value and that somebody is willing to pay for. So all these things have to be there. It's a process. That process has to turn an idea into a good or service that has value and that somebody is willing to pay for. So you can have the most brilliant idea, but if nobody is willing to pay for it, it can't be innovation. It cannot be innovation.
So it must be relevant to the time and space.
It has to be relevant. Now, when I was thinking about this program, one of the things that kept coming through my mind was when I was a kid, we used to go join the line to buy bread from the earth mold. You know how they used to bake bread? The flono.
Yes. And
that bread, the taste of that bread has remained on my tongue all these years.
Yeah.
And I don't have that experience
There's
anymore.
Something special about that
and the question is, how come we were not able to take an idea that worked and innovate it? But then we tend to everything electronic. And I really don't eat bread anymore because of that.
Wow.
So innovation doesn't have to be external. It doesn't have to be foreign to be good enough. It can be incremental around the things that we are familiar with. And how do we improve on them? I would like to see a farm where you can stand there and see 2,000 fronos, making really nice tea bread that trucks are loading away versus some air conditioning or some heating element harming them producing bread. And we're throwing these things away.
It's very interesting you say this. Quite recently, I think I was reading something, and this had to do, it was actually a movie I saw, but then I had heard of hickory being the preferred wood for grilling meat in America.
That's correct.
And this family business was just the old man was handing down something to a young son who, was all, I'm interested in doing something very new, but it turns out that this hickory has something special. It brings something to the steak.
Yes.
So they took a lot of new ideas and blended it with the old, and it kind of speaks to the issue that you just you described. Where have we lost it as a people?
Well, that's a great question. I think one of the challenges, and this is much more profound since I've been back, is that we are so much in a hurry.
Wow.
When we want something, we want it today from China. Even furniture, we want it from China. And as I said, innovation is a disciplined process. You need to put a lot of thought in it. You need to build the basic fundamentals. If you are always in a hurry to buy, you will never innovate. Because it's by building things that break, building things and making mistakes in those processes, that helps you to become an innovative nation. The second thing that often come up is when you look at our syllabus, or our syllabi for that matter, they are so crispy that when one course is a prerequisite for another course, you're actually told you cannot repeat anything else from the first one in the second. But if you are an undergrad, somebody has to connect the dots for you. So when I teach, I will revise the prerequisites before I get into the new course. But if you look at most of our syllabi, even reports that we get from regulatory bodies, they say, oh, you've repeated this here, you need to check it out. You've repeated this has already been covered. But for a young mind, they can't see discretely. They need a continuum, and so your syllabus itself has to connect them. So if you look at what we just did during the lockdown with my students, we built a ventilator. But really what we were doing was using engineering to solve a biological problem.
That's true.
Right? So you have the arm that is pushing the air, which is the robotic arm.
That's right.
Robotics. Then you have the air that the person is breathing per minute. That is biomedical sciences. Right? Then when the person begins to breathe, you have to find a way of detecting that so that you don't drown them in air. That is artificial intelligence. Now, if you teach this discretely, students will never know how they come together to solve the fundamental problem. So I think, one, we are in a hurry, and two, we are not looking at our educational system to address our unique needs, which is connecting the dots.
Someone said something, and I would like to test your position on that assertion, that there's a difference between education and schooling.
Okay.
And that maybe we've mislabeled what we call our educational system, and it should just be called a school system, because we want people to kind of go through a batch process where the experience is the same. It doesn't harness. And you said something very interesting, that the Germans show structure and a methodical approach to dealing with problems, and they innovate around it. But the Americans are very freestyle creative. Does schooling engender those, or education does? Which of the two? Education or schooling?
Now, I'll come to you, but the point I'll make first is that I think every single nation needs to define its educational system around its unique needs. That is imperative. Why do I say that? If you look at the American educational system, the kids can freestyle when they are in the university, but they are going to spend 4 summers doing internships. So there is a place where this converges for them, right? So somehow education and some sort of real life schooling comes together very nicely for them. Now, we live in an environment where we don't have those high-tech industries and places where people can experiment with this kind of new type of schooling. So, what are your options? You need to converge these two within your educational institution. You need to educate them, and you need to provide some real-life schooling for them to also survive.
Okay.
So, I think for us, the challenge is, how do we take our school system the way it is today and actually tool kids to go out there and survive, because there are no factories that are going to give them that extra skill. And if you want to compete in the global arena, and I'll tell you a story. In fact, I hired an engineer who was educated in this country, and I will not mention his name because the father is a very the quotation you just gave me probably sounds like the dad. you know, and we have a long family history to that. But one of the things that I asked him after I hired him was, when you came to America, how were you able to survive the dramatic transition from a Ghanaian educational system to a U.S. educational system? And he looked at me for a while and said, I almost flunked out my first year in graduate school, even though I got a first class in electrical engineering. So I said, what happened? He said, I couldn't program, which is something every single undergraduate from an American university, especially an engineer, is taken for granted. Nobody will even ask you if you know how to program. They assume you know it, just like we assume kids that have been to school know how to hold a pencil.
So this was a part of the connecting the dot.
The connecting the dot. And then he said, I couldn't use any modeling software. And so while my classmates were busy throwing frisbees, I was sweating. But after the first year, things kind of equalized. And by the time I went to do my PhD, it was obvious I was at the same level. So I said, what made you survive? He said, that grit from having gotten a first class made me survive. I said, if you had a third class, would you survive? He said, no. So for me, I see the educational institution as the place, as the formative years where we need to give kids as much as they can get and let them experience it, because there's nowhere else that they can experience. And when they go into the global arena, like I said earlier, nobody is going to make excuses for them. Nobody is going to ask them whether they know how to program. The professor walks into a graduate school class and assumes that if you have an undergraduate degree from University of Nyankpala, you are on the same page
as everyone else. They don't care that you know, if it's a game of football, we're playing on artificial turf. I don't care if you were playing Sakura. You've got to have to pull your socks up and play. And this story you share about this young man, obviously, shows that there was a certain level of personal drive that made the difference. But for success to be achieved, it has to be a repeatable process. And you never can create willpower in everybody. Everyone comes with their own. So the skill set required to do that. How will you, and I run this utopian country, the name changes, so for the lack of a better name today, I want to call this country Kokomlemle. And it's very much like Ghana, you know, developing country. What are the things you think we ought to do to create what I'd like to call the innovation mindset, and see it cascading across home, society, community, industry, and even at the state level, that we apply, so a certain principle that makes innovation the mainstay of what we do?
Good question. I will offer you two approaches. The first one is a question that I'll try to answer. What are we good at? And that's a question somebody asked me many years ago, and it always lingers. Because innovation, one easy way to start it when you don't have a culture, is to start with what you are good at. We are one of the leading producers of cocoa in the world. Are we the country of choice that you will want to send your kid or your kids to go study cocoa? We should be able to control the whole value stream of the cocoa industry. If anybody from Belgium wanted to study how to plant cocoa seedlings, they should be coming to Ghana. So we need to start.
In fact, if they want to make chocolates, they have to come and learn it here.
We need to start from our strengths.
Mm.
We have mining. We should be building the bulldozers that go into the ground to dig gold. We should be refining them, not exporting them. And once you control that value chain, you're going to have innovative processes will come out of it because you have control over it end to end.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to answer that fundamental question. What are we good at?
What are we good at? What's that comparative advantage we have?
Exactly. I think the second is, and I do this in my school, my objective is that a C student from my university should be as good as an A student from anywhere else. So I allow them to do things, I allow them to make mistakes, I allow them to explore,
Mm-hmm.
and I go into the trenches with them. Okay, being in the trenches with them gives them the confidence that an engineer doesn't necessarily have to wear a suit and tie and sit in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
You have to build things, you have to touch things, you have to break things, you have to experience things, and you have to ask questions. It has to become a question society. So I think we can do a little bit of innovation on the educational side, you know, by supporting the kids to really understand the things that they are doing, not to get scared, not to feel broken,
Mm-hmm.
not to feel like when a professor walks into the class, he's actually there to destroy them.
Mm-hmm.
They should feel that this person is there to build them up, and that whether they fail or not, they can pick themselves up and continue to push. So I think there's a psychological piece
Mm-hmm.
of what we need to do. We need to build the confidence of being able to do stuff. You know, I think sometimes when we buy products from abroad and the exterior looks so nice, we think it's miracles that are in there. But when you take the chassis apart, there are things that we can do.
Mm.
And I'll tell you, recently when a doctor from Kolebu came in and we showed him how you could use a cow leather to pump air into somebody's lung, he stood there like this, folded his hands, looked at it for a while, and he said, I can use this today, you know.
Wow.
So for him, it's like second-year student doing this stuff is amazing. So I think we need to imbibe these kids with the sense of doing, the sense of experimenting, and break that mold. You know, when I teach innovation to kids, one of the things, and trust me, kids are really, really brilliant. You know, you ask them, and said, are you guys innovative? No. Do you guys know any innovators? No. If I tell you we are an innovator, will you believe me? No. And then he turned around and he said, do you know you are all innovators? And they are all quiet. He said, when grandpa is waking up in the morning, what happens to him? Just imagine your grandpa. And then one says, when grandpa is standing up, he holds his waist. He says, it hurts. I said, can you design something to help grandpa step up off his chair easily without that pain? That would be innovative. Another one says, grandma forgets to take her pills. I said, can you give her something that vibrates when it's time for her to take her pills? And so, even within the home environment, if you interrogate kindergarten kids for an hour, you will walk away with with a lot of ideas of things that we still need to do. You know, so I think it is there, but we need to create that ecosystem. And part of that ecosystem is to give chance to local entrepreneurs resources to build these things. We cannot be too much in a hurry and be innovative.
I may be wrong with this example, but this is an Ivy League university story that it played a key role. I think it's MIT. The Second World War. Did quite a lot of research. You know, and you know, this is, and I'm going to paint a very interesting picture. We see the government having a vision that says we want to be dominant in this war effort. But when the war ends, how do we take this dominance to another level? Why are we not seeing that kind of thinking in our space? And I'm not talking just Ghana, I'm talking the continent. I mean, you could take South Africa just a little out of it, and maybe Egypt and Nigeria, Morocco. But generally, you know, we've not harnessed academia, industry, as part of the push for innovation.
Yeah.
What do you think accounts for that? Or if you can't answer that in your own mind, where do you think we need to tweak things to be able to recognize that?
So I think the fundamental challenge here was that we set up institutions with mandates that essentially evolved away from the original mandate. And so that is one. The second thing is that we have institutions that government invests a lot of money into, but there is no accountability. If you don't hold universities to account for the investments that you put in them in terms of patents. So let me digress a little bit. The reason why we say United States of America is an economic giant is the number of technical papers they produce every year is a metric. The number of PhDs that they produce is a metric.
Okay.
The number of patents that are filed is a metric.
You've got quite a few to your name.
Yes, and none of that is a metric here. So if I take our largest engineering institution, which is KNUST, if I were government, if I were the Minister for Education, I'll say, this year, how many patents did you file? How many technical publications did you? How many of those patents became products? So we have to push them differently. We haven't. Right now it has been, we just mass produce graduates and unleash them.
Yeah. Carry on.
So I think those are some of the fundamental things that we need to correct. I think another thing that we need to correct is that scientists and engineers have not really been integrated into our national development aspirations. Even this whole COVID conversation, I've not seen the scientists in the forefront. I've only seen the politicians in the forefront talking about it. So if you don't give them the platform, people begin to develop self-esteem problems. They're like, well, there's no value that I can bring to these discussions. But we need to let the engineers be the engineers. We need to let the scientists be the scientists. We need to have technical committees that have these people on there really making decisions.
Right.
And oftentimes when we talk about lack of employment, I actually say, what do we mean by that? Because every district needs an engineer. Every municipal building needs an engineer.
That's true.
Every school needs a nurse. So how can you tell me that we have unemployed nurses? Kindergartens need nurses present on that campus. And I'm sure parents will be willing to pay to have a nurse present. So somehow we need to go back to the fundamentals of systems thinking. That says that things do not just exist in isolation. We have to look at the connectivity. If you want to solve unemployment, it's not just you have to look beyond just the educational system. We need psychologists. We need to hire more policemen that have degrees in psychology. We need to subject them to psychometric analysis to make sure that we are hiring the right people. So there is actually no degree that we are producing in our universities today that has no value. And so when I hear people say, oh, we have too many liberal art courses, that's the reason why people cannot find jobs. I'm just like, are you for real? We need all these people. We just need to find out how to integrate them into our community, into our society.
So we've got the ingredients. We're just not the recipe to make the broth.
Yeah.
It's 42 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge, and we're happy to have my guest in the studio today is Dr. Fred McBagonluri, an inventor, a novelist, which we will hopefully get into before, because I don't think that's where I want to be plundering your brain today. But we're having a conversation about innovation and how you can evolve an innovation mindset, not just at home, but generally in society, and also one that is state championed. Elsewhere, there are some examples where the state creates an enabling environment for business to fund innovation. And I could be fabulously wrong, but I'm yet to hear of a groundbreaking innovation where it says, okay, this big company in this sector put so much money into making this happen, and as a result we did A, B, and C. Is it that there's corporate philanthropy is some bug we haven't caught, or an environmental factor or policy makes that possible elsewhere?
I think elsewhere, businesses are incentivized to invest in innovation. When I work for Siemens, every year we will put a list together of all our R&D projects and how much money we've spent on it, and we get tax breaks for that.
Wow.
So there was a real incentive to accumulate those patents, to do more research work, to modify even products in the field. And so I think that ecosystem kind of supported more innovation. Here we have fewer industries that are probably overtaxed. I've had situations where folks have come up to me and said, I went and presented this idea, everybody liked it, but I went back and nobody ever called me. So that's one. The companies also have to begin to feel that whatever idea you have is going to directly enhance their business. Otherwise, they are not going to fund it. Now, if they get tax breaks for funding it, they can take risks on even their own familiar, because sometimes an idea is just an idea, but if you throw a little bit of money at it and start to innovate it, the opportunities become obvious. So I think and I alluded to this earlier when I said every nation has to find out what actually works for her. What kind of educational system do I need that is going to function for me? What do I need to do with my businesses and enterprises so that they will become more innovative? Because if these organizations are innovative, your tax base simply broadens. So we need to be able to link government income, government revenue, to also innovation. I think that will incentivize government.
The president, I think, put together some, thought leaders. You are a member of that committee, if I could call it that, which is supposed. What's the mandate again? To stimulate innovation, industrialization. See, let's critique that for a moment. Is that what, if you were piecing the process together, what would be that special catalyst you would throw in the mix to make that thing just go boom?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't think I have the answer completely for it. But I think, after that meeting, we've not had any meetings anymore. Industrialization is not a one-time thing. It's not a one-time event. But like I said earlier, until government can also see value in the outcomes, they will not be incentivized to put money in it. So it's the chicken and the egg story. Which one comes first? Is it government policy to become an enabling environment to help people innovate? Or that people just have to innovate and government will find an opportunity in it and support it? I think it has to be a deliberate decision. Innovation cannot be left to chance. We have to have a deliberate national policy with targets that says, look, for the next 2-3 years, these are the category of products that we are not going to import into this country. We're going to make them here. And say in the next 15 years, the bar stops here. Ghana has to be self-sufficient in rice. Ghana has to be able to make its own chocolate. Ghana has to have its own grass-fed beef here. The savannah is sitting up there. You can and export idle. So, you can if wishes were horses, beggars might ride, I hear. But look, we can't leave these things to chances anymore. And I think that the time is now, because what we all learned from this corona crisis was that the countries that had access to equipment were not even willing to sell components.
Why should they? They need it.
Exactly.
Survival. If you and I were stuck in an elevator, it's whoever can draw a lot of oxygen quickly.
So I mentioned that to basically make the point that we are getting to a point where the only option we have is to innovate. And just as Darwin said, evolve or die, I'm going to say we either innovate or die.
All right, innovate or die. 48 minutes past 1, and when I look at the clock at these times when I'm having a good conversation, I just hate that we have to end. But we'll find a way to still draw more out of you. You know, we always talk about, you know, let's innovate or die. And if COVID-19 has, you know, if there's one thing that is left with us, is that we actually can do some things right. Do you sometimes feel frustrated with the Ghana project when it comes to speed of adoption and, you know, just going with the flow and trying to think outside the box?
I think sometimes I get frustrated because there's so much opportunity around us that we don't see. And all we often hear are the complaints. And you walk into a typical town and country planning office and they have documents all the way to the ceiling. And just digitizing those alone creates both job and streamlines processes. We have 60,000 land litigation cases in Ghana.
Wow.
And that tells you that you need an innovation in the land system itself, how to manage land. You know, it's not just a legal issue, it's also a technology issue. You can't sell land to more than 2 people at the same time. I have a piece of land somewhere in Texas, I don't even know where it is anymore, but 100 years from now,
it is there and it will still be yours.
It will still be there. So, and then we talk about roads. You know, we tar roads, then the next day, they have potholes on them. And we focus on roads, but really the problem we ought to solve is a transportation problem. If you can move people around with drones, will you really bother building more roads or building more drones? So we need to go to the fundamental imperatives that shape our society. To just say that unemployment is a problem without really seeing the opportunities around us, you know, to grow corn, to can corn, to roast corn, to ship it, to export bananas. The opportunities are there and they are around us, and we don't have any reason to be poor. We are poor by choice. It's not by design, because the opportunities are staring at us every day. You can grow tilapia and export tilapia abroad and become a millionaire. You don't have to sit in an office and wear a suit and tie because you have a bachelor's degree. You can make a living. And so those are the things that bother me, because when my students work on projects, the first thing I tell them is, think about how this project is going to become a job that you will set up to hire people. Don't just look at it as something that's a class project and it's over. So I think these are some of the ideas we need to continuously inculcate in this case, that every one of us is a potential employer.
Yeah, I know in these times one of the things that, you know, Academic City has been very well known for was the low-cost ventilator project. But prior to that, very interesting story of a young man. Was it first year student or second year? Second year student who just walked up to you and said, I need you to make a token investment, and I want to try and build an incubator for hatching eggs. Now, I'm very interested in that because, you know, of the things that you said, some time ago in Ghana's history, we were self-sufficient as far as the poultry industry was concerned. Where we milled our own feed, we hatched our own eggs, everything.
Tobacco farms.
Today, we even import day-old chicks.
We do.
And eggs. You know, I mean, but this is a second year student, right? What made him first rise to the occasion, and how did you harness that dream and helped him realize it?
So I met this young man one day because his roommate sent me an email and said my roommate is struggling to pay the 10% tuition, that we had given him a 90% scholarship.
Okay.
And yet he could still not afford the 10. So his friends were contributing money to help him pay the rest of his fees to be on campus. So I invited him to my office and I looked at his grades and he had like 4.0. Like, wow, okay, this kid is really, really brilliant. He shouldn't be struggling. So move him on to presidential scholarship, full scholarship covered. Then he came back another time and said, well, while I was on holidays, I decided to try my hands at making an incubator, and I built one that could hatch 50 eggs.
Wow.
I would like to make something bigger. So that's interesting. I said, okay, what do you need? So he said, a little money, maybe 100 CDs, something like that. So I gave him 100 CDs, and then I walked in one day, and he was building this big incubator, and everything was made up of wood. And I said, no, you need some aluminum here, you make it a little more robust, and get some electronics. So how much is it going to cost? He said, I'm going to go ask around. He came back and said, it's going to cost 1,400 CDs to build one that can hatch 550 eggs.
Wow.
I said, okay, here's the
So
money.
he went from 50, so he went 11-fold.
Yes. So here's the interesting thing. During this lockdown, he built one in Bolga that is 700.
Wow.
And he's opened a hatchery for guinea fowls. Okay. And so yesterday, I got a call from his math teacher that said, he's interested in doing more, like building it. I said, why doesn't tell him I want him to formalize this? He should register a company. I wouldn't mind being a minority shareholder in it just to keep an eye on it. And then we'll front him the resources that he needs to expand this to 10,000 beds, which is what his interest is. So why will Mahami want a job after college? When he has created one for himself, he can build incubators and sell them.
And he can employ people.
And that's where we ought to be going. So that's the story of this fascinating young man who is pushing the envelope.
But it's also a story of fashioning education around the realities and the challenges we face.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's 5 more minutes to the top of the hour. Let's see. We have some comments from here. The first one I see here is from someone called Shem. He says, good day, Joe FM. I totally agree and admire the Ghanaian Einstein in your studio. Well, I know you're trying to say he's smart. Einstein was smart, but yeah, maybe if they sat together, he might be smarter than Einstein. God's own Ghana deserves more of such. Connecting the dots and with some applause. And we also have another comment. Let's see that one here. Selwyn, if we have some on the Facebook link, let's have that. Greetings, Joy. Thank you. Hope you're still booming with true information to your audience. Okay, that's fine. Right, so we're going to end the conversation. And see, everyone's wearing a mask these days, so you're not sure. I think it's Gifty Ando Apia. Her forehead suggests that it is. She's bringing the news at 2. And before we go, I'm just going to ask you for, 2 more questions.
Okay.
And then I'll play a song for you.
Perfect.
And then we'll end the show. So, my final question, novelist.
Yes. Yes.
How did an inventor, engineer, design, thinker, totally one day you sat there and say, I'm going to write a novel?
That's an interesting question. My grandmother was an amazing storyteller. She came from the north in the early 40s and essentially married a stranger. They basically married her and brought her to my grandfather, and they lived very happily for 55 years.
Wow.
And they were very, very instrumental. If you were to ask the most empowering people in my life, it would be the two of them. And everything she told us in life was true stories.
Wow.
The greatest lessons were always true stories. So I think I got the storytelling spirit from her, and I always said if I didn't write, I would go insane because I have too much to talk about.
That's wonderful.
And so I've just finished writing my 9th novel.
Okay.
And I think I have 2 more left.
All right. When are you publishing the novel?
I think by the end of July I should have a novel ready called The Betweener.
Okay, I would love to read that and review it and share my thoughts with. I like the idea that a lot of Ghanaians are writing nowadays. Last week, my guest, Reverend Ekwa of Ribuating, launched.
She went to Virginia Tech.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Small world, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So here's a song I'm leaving our audience with, and this is for your enjoyment, Dr. McBagonluri. Thank you so much for making time to join me.
I'm humbled.
And we certainly have learned a lot, and we look forward to telling even more wonderful stories together.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Bob Marley is a man I know you like, and this is a song that's good for these times. Three Little Birds. Enjoy the afternoon as we usher you into the news, after which we'll bring you Drive Time with Sammy Forsin. It's been a good day, and God bless you all. Stay safe. Shalom.